Hi, I'm Jacob Bonta, host of Growth and Beyond. After generating millions of dollars in pipeline value for various companies via fundamental marketing principles and leveraging modern technology, we made this show to interview top business leaders and highlight the ways to achieve growth for your business. If you'd like to level up your customer base and let us help you grow, email me at jacob@lowlandscollective.com. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Growth and Beyond. Today, I'm excited to be chatting with Michael Epstein, co-founder of Postpilot, the direct mail marketing platform reinvented for modern e-commerce. In today's episode, Michael and I dive into the pitfalls of focusing too much on ROAS, which is a return on your ad spend, and KPIs, which is a key performance indicator for those of you that don't know what that means. We also discuss why prior experience in an industry isn't always crucial when it comes to achieving business success, that is. We also explore the essential traits for success in unfamiliar industries and learn how Michael scaled and exited his online retail business, which started in his college dorm. Crazy enough. Throughout the interview, Michael shares his proven process for growth, his journey to Postpilot, and the acquisition of the AI company Handwrite.io. We also touch on the potential dangers of deepfake content, super hot topic today of the chat GPT technology, and the most effective ways Postpilot has been able to scale. So without further ado, here's my conversation with the co-founder of Postpilot, Michael Epstein. What's up, Michael? How's it going? Thanks for coming on the show.
Good to be with you, Jacob. Thanks.
Awesome. Hey, if you don't mind, just could you say what's up to the audience and share something that you believe is the biggest myth when it comes to growing a business?
Interesting right out of the gate. All right. What's up, audience? I'm Michael, one of the co-founders of Postpilot, and I've been in direct-to-consumer for over 20 years, ran a company, started a company myself, sold it, been in private equity, running private equity portfolio brands for a number of years, and now with Postpilot. So I've been around a while, and I don't know, maybe first thing that comes to mind, that's the greatest myth is maybe that you should focus all of your time and attention on optimizing like ROAS and trying to move KPIs. And I think a lot of people forget about just start thinking about product and offer. Is there something, do you have something that people want? And is it a compelling offer? Does it feed a need in the market? Or are you just going to be constantly battling against, trying to force feed something that the market just doesn't want, and you're focused on trying to squeeze an extra, half a point of ROAS out of a Facebook ad when you're missing the bigger picture? So I'll go with that.
Oh, that's a great one. That's such I feel like a huge can of worms for a lot of different people. And I've noticed it on our side, like with the clients that we work with, a lot of the time we want to sort of discuss some of the strategy around are we sure there's product market fit here, before we're jumping in and diving into fixing what's potentially not even broken. You know what I mean?
Yeah, man. Why can't we scale this up? Why can't you 5x our ad spend? Well, because people actually don't want your product.
Right. Yeah, you haven't zoomed out at all.
Yeah.
I read that you started an online retailer or an online retail business out of your college and dorm room in 2000, and then fast forward 13 years, you grew it. Well, over the span of those years, you grew it to tens of millions in sales, right? And then you exited in 2013. Can you just give the audience a little high level overview of that, if you don't mind?
Yeah. So I am old. I started in 2000, and I think my first platform was called Miva Merchant, which I doubt anybody in your audience knows or recognizes. There's obviously pre-Shopify, it's pre-Facebook, it's pre-Google, it's pre all of that stuff. So yeah, but I was always entrepreneurial, and my my co-founder of that business was one of my childhood friends, and he came, and this was when the internet was first and e-commerce was really first kind of starting. And it's like, we should make products that help people enhance their video gaming experience. And I was like, well, that's a cool idea. We're not into video gaming, but lots of people are, and it's a big market, and let's go figure out how to sell that stuff on the internet. So that's essentially what we did. And right out of the gate, had to figure out how to get the word out, how to generate customers, and it predated all these sort of traditional ad channels. But what really ultimately led that company to be successful was really the predecessor to influencer, what's now influencer marketing. It was finding, at that time, it was a lot of folks that had blogs, and blogs wasn't even a term at that time. It was like websites that they were putting up talking about video games. And we would partner with those folks, and they'd advertise and review our products, and ended up growing really quickly. And we exited it. I held it a lot longer than I anticipated, because we went through the 2008 sort of recession, and that wasn't a good time to sell. But we sold in 2013, and that's when I started getting into more of the private equity operating work.
Yeah, I think one of the things you said, I think, is a huge lesson, I think, to a lot of people, because I feel like there's this misconception around like the sort of pursuit of starting your own business or acquiring a business, that you have to know the industry. You don't really, at least I don't think so, because there's just so many different ways in order to learn about not only the industry, but like the opportunity within the industry. And back to our common misconception, like if you can hone in on the skill to be able to zoom out on things like that, then I think it empowers you to really go after any industry or market you really want to, or the one that you see most fit to you, right? You have to be a little smart about it, but
Yeah, I totally agree. That really came up in my private equity work. And what I realized, and my co-founder and business partner kind of thinks about it the same way. Philosophically, the tactics and strategies that you're using to grow online businesses or direct to consumer businesses don't really vary by category at the fundamental level. Like, you're still building life cycle marketing campaigns, and you're still having to understand how to engage with potential prospects and lead them through the customer journey and ultimately acquire them. And that's when you apply that at a high level, and then you surround yourself with folks that are experts in the particular category that you're working in, you can totally accomplish a lot. Again, we ran ecom for a women's lingerie brand that was a portfolio brand of a fund that we worked with. Our last company was a multi-$100 million retailer of aftermarket automotive accessories. He and I didn't know the first thing about cars. Like, he came from New York. He walks in to the office. We came in as CEO and CMO. He walks in, people are asking him what he drives. He's like, I don't know. I took an Uber here. I'm from New York.
Yeah.
I don't have a car. I had like a Tesla, nobody, but we surrounded ourselves with folks that understand that. We set more high level direction and strategy. And we were able to successfully grow these businesses, to your point, without necessarily being experts in the field, as long as you've got those folks around you, and that you can speak credibly to your audience.
Is there one characteristic that you think is important when trying to understand or succeed in maybe an industry that you're not familiar with?
Yeah, totally. It's being endlessly curious. I think that if there's one thing, I'm not the smartest guy in the room most of the time, if at all. I'm extremely curious and ask a lot of questions and consume a lot of information when I need to immerse myself in something new. And I feel like I have a good capacity to learn. And so that's, I think, one of the key traits that you need, one, in just about any business, but particularly as you're entering into businesses that you haven't necessarily worked on before. Just how to ask questions to familiarize yourself with it and apply sort of the more, again, fundamental philosophical things that you know and believe in to these new products and categories. I think you can get pretty far that way.
Yeah, I totally agree. Yeah, I think that's a super golden nugget there. So you mentioned earlier that you've always sort of been entrepreneurial. What makes you say that, and or why do you think that?
I mean, I was the guy that, you know, was coming up with business ideas from a young age. And to your earlier point, like none of them they were all driven by a need in the market. They were not driven by personal interest in necessarily what I was doing. Like we ran when I was growing up, started a car detailing business because I lived in a fairly affluent part of town and there were lots of nice cars that everybody wanted to get washed and taken care of a lot. Was I a big car guy? No. But I saw the need. We started, a DJing business when I was young because again, there were a lot of kids having parties and wanted to hire, DJs, and we just put ourselves out there and we figured it all out. Not because I was like into DJing or even, any it was just identifying that need in the market and figuring it out. So I was always just that way. And I was the guy that was, making $25 an hour when all the kids were making $7 at the yogurt shop, after school. So that was always kind of in my personality.
That's kind of how I was too. Like, it must have been really hard for my parents
Right.
to have to deal with all of the changing because it seemed like I had a different hobby probably every week or something. But
yeah, these jobs were before I could even drive. So my parents, I was fortunate that they supported it and had to drive me to some of this stuff because this was when I was pretty young.
when you started that online retailer out of your college dorm, excuse me, and I know that it was a span of 13 years, but what would you say were like maybe the top 1, 2, or 3 things that you could attribute to the success of that entity?
Yeah, I think one, recognizing what worked, like figuring out what worked fairly early on, and then just doubling and tripling and quadrupling down on those things versus necessarily spreading myself super thin and just focusing on a million different tactics and not doing any of them particularly well. Like once we figured out that this sort of influencer type marketing was driving a lot of growth, it was just go hard on that and start expanding out from that, from this category of influencer to another category who focuses on a different type of game in that particular case. So a lot of that. And then you said a couple things. I think putting the right team around you, that was something that took me the longest time to really start to understand. And it served me well later on in my career because I feel like the team that I put together at Postpilot, as well as the teams that we've put together at some of the portfolio brands that we've run, have just been exceptional. But that came as a result of a lot of learnings and a lot of failures earlier on, where didn't understand how to make the right vetting process for a new hire, didn't necessarily understand the right way to onboard and support somebody, didn't understand how to delegate properly. Like these were all things that came as a result of learning over time and getting, consistently better each time you went through it, to the point where now it became more of a core competency of mine and my business partners. So I think those are probably a couple big ones.
Yeah, that's amazing. And you said you basically honed those skills and learned them throughout your time at Auto Anything.
I think it was prior to Auto Anything. It was with my first company, E-Dimensional, is where I really learned and honed those skills and made a number of mistakes along the way that I could use as learning experiences, and that is what allowed me to be even more successful in those areas, as we moved on to other ventures.
What would you say is the most important steps or things to be aware of, I guess, when building a team?
One, what's the roles and responsibilities? How are you going to measure success in that role, and how are you going to support that role to set them up for success? Like I think in general, my number one sort of responsibility as a leader is to ensure that my team is supported and they're set up for success, and that we're constantly removing blockers and obstacles for those folks. If you think it's going to be like micromanaging these people and hiring really junior people that you're going to have to spoon feed them everything that they should be doing, like that does not scale. And that's again a learning that we've that came from my previous experiences. Like you can get away with hiring somebody who's maybe more junior for this position, but because they might cost less, but it costs more in the long run because it's your time that's being sucked up having to constantly sort of train and manage and oversee that person. So I don't know if that totally answers your question, but that's one thing.
Yeah, no, it does. That's perfect. Because I think that's a huge hurdle, not only in like empowering your business to have the best chance at becoming successful is when you have other people involved, so that you can have different sort of ideas or ways of tackling whatever issue you may be trying to tackle. But yeah, it's like the biggest step to me in really sort of believing in your company, and your business. I just know it's like a very not only a hot topic, but one that a lot of people get hung up on. Not only deciding to do it, but like how to do it is, I think, just like anything, there's a million ways to do it, but there are probably core principles to follow that lead you to success more likely. You mentioned that the business before you took over Auto Anything was in rapid decline and it was unprofitable. What do you think the key thing was to sort of turn it around?
Yeah. So when we acquired Auto Anything, it was a carve out of a public company, AutoZone, and it was in this multi-year decline. It was, like you said, it was pretty massively unprofitable. We bought it through a fund that I was a partner with, and then determined pretty quickly that it needed really a management change. And so that's when myself and my partner came in to assume those roles. And I think the biggest learning that we had there, one was, well, first you had to kind of right size the ship. So it was very bloated. It was part of a public company, so it had a lot of bloat in a lot of areas, both because they needed 50 people in accounting because it's a publicly traded company and there was a lot of that, but also in that it was a publicly traded company and laying people off was not a good look for that business either when you have to report on that. So, one, getting it into a stronger financial position right out of the gate and making the tough calls quickly was critical. But then the biggest learning was fixing culture before you could fix the business. And so again, it was part of this. Everything was very sort of on legacy systems, part of this huge sort of conglomerate that had tons of bureaucracy and layers of management. This was not an entrepreneurial environment which was necessary for a company in this space and of this size. Nothing really got done, even though they had a ton of people. So one, getting the right people. We talked about hiring, and that was a big thing here, getting the right people on the bus and the wrong people off the bus, either through natural attrition or making specific changes in areas where we felt like this is not the person that's going to get us where we need to go, or is not bought into the vision that we have for this company. Those can be real weights around your ankles when you're trying to turn something around. So making those changes rapidly. And then again, just really changing the culture such that people felt, I feel like the word empowered is kind of cliche, but I don't necessarily know of a better one. But basically, like, give people the authority and empower them to do their jobs if you felt like they were competent, capable people, which by then we thought that we had a core team that was. Let them start executing, support them, unblock them when they need it, give them the tools and resources they need to be successful in their job, and then just kind of get out of the way. Promote a culture of transparency so that the team actually understood what was going on in the business, knew where we were headed, what our challenges were, what our goals were, implemented frameworks like OKRs to better manage the team and ensure everybody was aligned and moving in the same direction. Like, all of those things had to happen before the business could really start to properly execute and actually start to turn around. And so with a company of that size, again, a few hundred people, a couple $100 million in revenue, it took close to a year to kind of really get to a place where we felt like things culturally and on the team side were really in good, strong shape and had that solid foundation. And once that happened, stuff started really clicking, and the business trajectory changed pretty significantly as we all started executing a lot faster and a lot better.
So you mentioned that you were keen on empowering your employees and giving them the authority to make decisions on their own, right? For the betterment of the business. Did you find, since it was a publicly traded company, that, like with removing bloat, for instance, was it always, I'm assuming it was, but was it always an uphill battle to sort of get your point across and get it greenlit? You know what I mean?
So when we bought the company, then we took it private. It was a carve out from a publicly traded company. So at that time it was private. So we had a lot more say in what, and again, we came in as CEO and CMO. So we ultimately had the authority to kind of decide how things were going. But I think in general, again, we use certain frameworks like OKRs that provided the guardrails that were necessary for folks to be able to make decisions that were still consistent with the goals of the company and the priorities of the company. So that was super helpful, again, in ensuring that people weren't just out there making decisions in isolation, that they were still working in kind of cohesively with the rest of the organization and focused on the same things that we as a company were focused on, but give them the autonomy to make some of those decisions on their own and be accountable and responsible to the results of those decisions.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, it seemed like once you exited Auto Anything in 2018, right? Is that what
2021? We acquired 2018.
Oh, okay. So it sounds like you were building these systems and processes that you were then sort of rinsing and repeating with all of the other acquisitions that you were making. I read that you acquired 3 other 8-figure retailers, and you doubled their revenue in less than 6 months, right? Yeah. So your process, it worked. Can you speak to like maybe some key takeaways from like the process over, like tactically speaking, if that makes sense?
Yeah. So at Auto Anything, we did acquire several other businesses to bolt on to that, because what we felt like was we had built out this team of high performers that understood the market really well and understood strategically and tactically what it took to drive growth in these businesses. So when we found opportunities to acquire other similar businesses in the aftermarket automotive space, we were eager to do that because we had sort of a significant amount of fixed OpEx that was for the team and the technology that was needed to support this type of business. How could we get more leverage out of that? And we were able to acquire multiple businesses and essentially assume very, very little of their operational overhead because we had all of it already in place. And that allowed us to drive a lot of profitability out of those businesses in addition to revenue growth. And essentially, they became almost plug and play at that point. We essentially had this playbook about how we would manage their website catalog, how we would manage their life cycle email campaigns based on what we knew about them. We had a playbook about how we manage their paid spend, and these are pretty big businesses and ones that had a lot of complexity to them, millions of SKUs, hundreds or thousands of different products. There's a lot to manage, but once we kind of built out the playbooks for how to manage those kinds of things at scale, we could plug and play those playbooks into these other businesses and saw pretty rapid and significant growth each time we plugged a new one in.
You come from an automotive industry and then you pivot to focusing more marketing, which is all encompassing when it comes to industries, right? I'm wondering what made you make that shift?
So with Postpilot, we have this. Postpilot's a direct mail automation platform for e-com and direct to consumer businesses. So the thesis was we had used direct mail as a marketing channel for many of the businesses that we had run over the years and had success with it, but it was this clunky experience that you might have as a perception of direct mail. It's like a bunch of spreadsheets, finding a print house and batch and blasting a bunch of people with card, and then finding a bunch more spreadsheets to try and figure out if any what the return on that was. And we basically were saying somebody needs to build Klaviyo for direct mail. That was the world that we came from. Like, we were at heart life cycle digital marketers, where we preached like the RFM models, recency, frequency, monetary value for customer segmentation, and triggered sends based on user behavior. Those were sort of core tenets to the strategies that we implemented at the businesses that we were in. And then we said somebody needs to apply those same sort of principles to direct mail and build a platform that can do this. So we kind of set out, again, it was in our DNA. And we specifically wanted to do something around direct mail because we thought that, again, one, it was ripe for innovation, and two, it was going to ultimately start making a comeback as brands realized more and more that people are just being saturated with digital ads and they're not opening and engaging with their emails. So we sought out to do that, and that's essentially what we built. And I think it really builds on the 20 years of experience. My business partner's in the same boat, started his company around the same time as I did in 2000, had a similar sort of trajectory, and we've worked together for over 10 years. And we both have that same sort of background. And so we applied like all of the things that we had kind of learned over 20 years when it came to finding product market fit, developing a product that we think served the market, and then also building the team around us that we thought could help grow this business and achieve what we thought its potential is. And so that's kind of where we're at now. Like, we built this sort of Klaviyo for direct mail platform. We've got an amazing team around us it's just been kind of a rocket ship over the last couple of years.
And it seems like you're also you're utilizing your bolt-on strategy again when you acquired the handwrite.io. I think that's a huge jump, and it's sort of like, honestly, on the spot, just makes me. Well, I'll throw this out to you. Like, I think you're hitting on a vein that is very near in our future? Like the combination of AI with human characteristic, right? And for anyone that doesn't know, handwrite.io, what you guys do is you utilize an AI robot that basically can handwrite with real pens on the direct mail that you're sending on behalf of the company, correct?
Yeah. So Postpilot is the platform that allows you to send like the triggered individually personalized direct mail campaigns based on user behavior. So think a win back campaign. You sell a 30-day supply of supplements or whatever it is. Customer makes a purchase. If they don't come back and make a purchase in the next 35, 40 days, you've been emailing them, they still haven't come back, trigger a card on day 40. It's like, hey, Jacob, it's time for a refill. Come back and buy. So Handwrite was, as you said, like a natural extension of that, where we wanted to also offer this handwritten format, which is, as you said, pen to paper, writing with the nuance of a human hand. And that could be used for things like VIP campaigns. Customer makes their 5th purchase from you, or customer has now spent a total of $1,000 with your brand. Trigger a card that is just a thank you card from the founder or somebody at the organization to acknowledge them. So yeah, we acquired that company and integrated their technology into Postpilot. And yeah, as you said, similar strategy that leans on the experience we've had with acquisitions in the past.
Do you, while that's attractive and that's a brilliant idea, honestly, like super, super cool. And I'm really honestly interested in learning more about handwrite, like on my own. But do you think do you see any danger in the combination of AI with human characteristics? Have you thought about that?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think that in general, yeah, there's a lot of unanswered questions around, deep fake content and how that will impact people going forward. And I don't know that I'm qualified to opine on the solution necessarily, but clearly, not so much with respect to the specific product that we're offering, because it's a bit different. But in general, I think when it comes to marketing in general, there's increasing potential for abuse and sort of misleading content that I don't know exactly how it's going to be managed, but certainly is a question that needs to be answered, because I think people are going to continue to take advantage of technology that comes out if it means they can make a quick buck. And there's some unforeseen consequences of that. Yeah, I don't know how it's going to be managed, but agree with you that there's always potential for abuse.
For sure. Yeah. And I mean, I wasn't really around when everything was happening with like the first evolution of the internet and how the business world was sort of taking to that. But I'm assuming it was sort of the same way, like a lot of unknown equals fear typically.
Yeah. I mean, more generally, like I actually was thinking about this the other day. You had this phenomenon in early 2000s where every retailer was so scared that the internet was essentially cannibalizing their brick and mortar stores. And now it's come full circle in a way which I also find interesting, in that almost all the D2C brands are actively exploring retail distribution as another channel for them. So I just think it's interesting how that's kind of come full circle too. You've got obviously the legacy D2C brands like Warby and Allbirds and Casper, who have had brick and mortar for some time, but now you have many D2C brands that are looking for distribution in Target and Walmart and other retail stores. So yeah, I think that's interesting. Yeah, but there's always going to be innovation, and you always are going to have to learn to roll with things. And there's always going to be opportunities created out of these scenarios. Like, I don't know, I was thinking about Scott Galloway, who's a professor for NYU has a bunch of podcasts that your audience might be familiar with. He made a comment recently that I thought was interesting. Like, when cars were first developed, like who realized that in years from now, people would be, their jobs would be created for making heated seats and navigation systems, and all of these industries came about as a result of innovation. And none of those, and you could apply this to a million other examples, but that was just one that he used that's interesting. Like, you never could have foreseen that happening, but you've got to be prepared to evolve no matter what business or industry you're in.
100%. And I think he was talking about that recently on the Pivot podcast. I don't know if you listened to that or wait, no, it was a Prof G podcast,
G.
his podcast.
Yep.
And I'd never actually thought about that. As most people probably hadn't. Like, the first reaction, I think, gut reaction everyone has to, oh no, everything's becoming automated, is it's going to get rid of everyone's job, and then everyone's going to go crazy and kill each other. But
right,
it was a totally different perspective in which you have to think that, like to your point, like, the car industry opened up so many different jobs that no one had any idea were coming. I guess it's just, it's not as bad as everyone thinks it's going to be, but we still do have to be prepared for the change. You know what I mean?
Totally. I don't know that you can't really stop these kinds of things, so you kind of have to, right? But yeah, I thought it was an interesting perspective too. He was like, I think it was, we'd all still be farmers if they didn't invent machines to do a lot of that work. And like, it was an interesting perspective for sure.
Yeah, definitely. And I don't know if you're like this, but personally, like, when Chat GPT came out, I know it's like all the rage right now, which I hate even bringing it up, but I've never really been afraid of it. Like, some people in the industry and some of my buddies that own other agencies are a little afraid of it, that have like creative people working for them. But yeah, I've just always seen it as sort of a way just to be more efficient and be better. You know what I mean? In terms of speed and even quality. I'm interested. What's your perspective on a tool like that?
Yeah, again, like, there's people that are way more qualified to kind of opine on these things than me, but my reaction was generally similar to yours. And again, it makes me think of like how Scott was describing it. There's just, yes, there will be certain roles and responsibilities that are going to become obsolete as a result of this. I have no doubt that will happen to some degree, but what will be created as a result of this, it also probably goes beyond anything that we can foresee, at this point in time. I mean, again, when the internet first, was essentially became a thing, who could have possibly foreseen the industries that would be created as a result of that becoming available? And I suspect that will be the case here. And again, it's a function of like, how do we manage that transition? There's so many questions that need to be answered, but ultimately, like, I hope that it becomes a tool that makes people that much more productive and opens up opportunities to do all kinds of different things that we can't even imagine right now.
Completely agree. So with Postpilot and Handwrite, like, what is your end goal with those companies?
Yeah, I mean, I think that we have a ton of room still for growth. We've only penetrated, while we've grown really fast, we still have only penetrated a fraction of our target market in e-com and direct to consumer. I think we have a long way to go there to continue to introduce brands to this channel who may or may not have been using it in the past, and that helps diversify them away from some of the channels that have become overly competitive and overly saturated. And so our goal is really heads down, like, dominate this industry. And by doing so, I think we'll naturally be there's natural synergies with a lot of different companies that could leverage our technology to, across their customers as well. So continuing to partner with some of those folks to continue to expand our reach and use cases. But I think our main goal is just world domination for the in the near
Yeah,
term, at least within our little space of the market.
exactly. Yeah, that's something that I've noticed well, not recently, but for quite a span of time at this point. Is this fad is what I guess I could call it over the digital marketing? Like people are adding the digital onto the marketing like so often, like it's getting more and more often, right? Do you find that that's like one of the biggest walls to break down in terms of bringing your product to market, if that makes any sense? Because you're offering an in-person experience, like a tangible experience that basically goes against that digital sort of foresight,
Yeah, I think that the conversation was a lot harder before iOS kind of hit and so that was a little bit of a light bulb moment for a lot of folks where it was like, we've got to think about how to diversify our channels. We've become too dependent on one particular channel that can be, the rug can be pulled out from under us at any time. It continues to get more and more competitive, and that is not a trend that will change. And so I think that conversation became easier, and the way we've positioned the product and the way we've built the product also really resonates because we are digital marketers at heart. Like, again, that's been our DNA for so long. We know what that customer wants. We know how to build a product that makes sense to them. And when we talk about, again, building something that's like Klaviyo for direct mail, that resonates with people really, really quickly and easily because that's what they come from. That's a tool that they know really well and have used.
It's true.
And so helping connect those dots for people, I think, has really helped with clarity of our message and helping people understand like what we do. And then they're like, okay, that's interesting.
Right.
Tell me more about that. And if it helps, if it helps increase revenue and LTV at a return that's commensurate with what I'm getting from my other channels, one, great, because I need something new and different. And two, our brands they like the idea of direct mail campaigns because I think everybody tends to recognize that there's a general digital overload right now, and that blasting your message via email to your customers is not particularly memorable or distinct or engaging. And so most brands that we work with are they like the idea of saying, I'm going to put something physical and tangible in the hands of my customer and reach them and engage with them in a way that's different and more memorable than just hitting them over and over with email or retargeting ads or whatever it is. So yeah, long-winded way of saying I think people have become pretty receptive to what we do, and the more brands that use us, the more word of mouth tends to grow. So it's been great.
Yeah, I'm wondering if you're like capitalizing on it feels weird to say this, but like a new thing, even though it's old, right? It's new to most digital marketers that are fully focused on the digital aspect. I wonder if that's exciting to them, this new thing that they've never really got to experience, because with direct mail, typically it's not cheap, right? Yeah, and there's a lot of quantity sort of thresholds you have to meet. Yeah, that's really interesting. Is there any channel that you found to be the most sort of effective when it comes to growing Postpilot?
Yes. Well, a lot of it's come from word of mouth. And just to clarify one thing that you mentioned, well, two things. our website, when you look at it, actually says exactly what you were describing, which is like your favorite new
Yeah.
parentheses old marketing channel, because it is something that people like have in their head, but it hasn't been done quite that way. So yeah, that's exactly sort of the sensation that people
Yeah.
get. But also on minimum quantities, we actually have 0. That's another innovation that we have. Like you
Oh,
could
cool.
send one card for individually personalized card. There's no minimum.
Oh
So
gosh, that's awesome.
yeah, everything is done triggered, personalized, on demand. And so you don't again, we've just tried to really modernize this in a way that is appealing to the brands that we work with. But yeah, sorry, and I forgot your other question where you left off because I went back to your previous one.
Oh no, that's perfect. My question was, is there any one channel that you can sort of attribute to the most growth, or something that you've just seen to be most effective when it comes to scaling or growing your client base or customer base in Postpilot?
Right. Honestly, it's primarily snowballed for us in terms of word of mouth, and we have a lot of folks that are pretty influential in the e-com community who speak really highly of us and have used us, and that has really just created a snowball effect of brands actively wanting to try us out. Now we're continuing to push more on marketing stuff because we've grown our team so much and so fast that we can actually start to keep up now. And so now we're starting to push more on continuing to increase awareness among the brands that may not have heard about us yet, or maybe heard about us once and it was, somewhere in their list of things to do, but we need to nudge them a little bit. So yeah, we're working more on adding a lot more marketing channels now that we have the ability to hopefully keep up with our demand.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. Cool. And I know we're almost at time, but is there anything that you want to leave the audience with in terms of like where can they learn more about Postpilot or Handwrite, etc.? And then one final thing, like what's one sort of takeaway that the audience can use, I mean, even today or tomorrow, whenever they're listening, just to get one step closer to sort of the I don't want to say the life you live, but like the success that you've been able to achieve.
Sure. Well, you can find out more at postpilot.com. You can email me, Michael at Postpilot. You can find me on LinkedIn or Twitter if you reach out anytime. And man, that's a flattering question. I don't know that I've like that I'm the aspirational model here, but I think time management and productivity is really critical, and I'm not always the best at it, but it's a work in progress and something that's always pretty top of mind. And in terms of being able to delegate effectively, hire effectively, being able to manage your calendar effectively so that you're working on the highest priority things on any given day and not, constantly getting time, going down rabbit holes and getting time sucked. So I don't know if that answers quite the essence of the question, but I think to get, to have a good general lifestyle, it starts with putting the right people around you and managing your time such that you can focus on the things that are important and matter, whether it's in business or in your personal life.
No, I think that's awesome. And I think a perfect spot to wrap. Michael, I appreciate you coming on the show. I think there's a lot to learn here. You've got quite the decorated and colorful past.
Thanks, Jacob. Great to be here.
Thanks again for listening to another episode of Growth and Beyond. I hope you take something you learned from the conversation and apply it to your business today. If you enjoyed this episode, please leave a review wherever you're listening or watching and share it with a friend. And please be sure to tune in to next week's episode where I interview another top business leader and highlight ways to achieve growth for your business. See you then. If you'd like to level up your customer base and let us help you grow, email me at jacob@lowlandscollective.com.